We've officially made it to week 9 of college football, and I apologize, you guys, for not having this video out already, but I am recording this at the time right before the Boise State UNLV game, so there will be that prediction in this video. I've not checked any of the scores, so it will be coming on in a second, but this video will drop after that game has finished. But getting right into the games, guys, I'm going to start off with LSU at Texas A&M. And would you believe me if I told you that these were the top 2 teams in the SEC right now? Well, whether you believe it or not, it's true. Neither has a conference loss, but one will after this game. Both of these teams lost close in week 1 and have looked much better than that version of themselves. Both teams need this game, but who is going to get it? Well, there are a lot of variables in deciding that. Which version of Connor Wigman will we see? Do we see the one that carved up Missouri or the one that struggled against Mississippi State? Can LSU's run game work against this Texas A&M defensive front? Will home environment be able to get to LSU? Can A&M's offensive line withstand LSU's defensive pressure, and how is that going to affect the quarterback? And the same question can be asked for LSU. Both teams are strong up front. There's no doubt about that. So the line of scrimmage could be a huge factor in deciding this game. And who is going to end up being able to lean on who? Well, I'll tell you, I lean A&M in this game. In a game with margins this close, I have to go with a team that has the situational advantages, and I think that is A&M. Now, LSU does have less variables. You know, they're a little bit more predictable, and we don't really know what we're getting from A&M. So we could see LSU play just a more consistent game, and that's why they win this game. But I think home field advantage, and this being the second consecutive road game for LSU, is enough to tilt the scales in the Aggies' favor. Next, I have Penn State at Wisconsin, and I've said it once, and I'll say it again. Penn State is one of the most overrated teams in the country. Year after year, they get credit for beating all of the average or below average teams in their conference and lose every time they play against an actually good team, which usually is Michigan or Ohio State. And they're doing the same thing this year so far, and we have them at number 3 in the AP poll. They're not the third best team in the country. Will they get exposed this weekend? Definitely hard to tell because I'm really not so sure what to think about Wisconsin so far. I think they are slightly above average, and I lean with the upset here. They did lose to USC and Alabama, so it's not like they have Northwestern as losses or anything like that. And they have blown out their last 3 opponents. Their defense has looked really solid, and I think they have found themselves on offense. This game is also at home for Wisconsin, and I just have a feeling that they will find a way to win this game. I know Penn State has an incredible tight end and a great pair of running backs, but I just don't think this will be their best game. And so, yeah, give me Wisconsin. Next, I have Boise State at UNLV, the game that's going on right now. This G5 game could be the decider for the G5 auto bid spot. For Boise State, the talking point is pretty obvious: Ashton Jeanty, a generational running back that really should win the Heisman in my eyes. He will almost definitely get his on the ground no matter who he's up against. I mean, we saw what he did against Oregon, the number 1 team in the country right now, and Boise State really should have won that game too. So, and that's their only loss. So, on the other end, UNLV has taken down several power conference teams and looked very dangerous in their own right. But I do think that Boise State is the better team. I think Ashton Jeanty will be the difference. So give me Boise State to travel to Las Vegas and win it. Many of you probably won't watch this game, but you really should. It could be one of the best games all weekend, and it's on a Friday. Next, I have Washington at Indiana. And there's no way in heck I'm picking against Indiana here after what I saw them do to Nebraska last week. Yes, they will be without their starting quarterback in this one, but I think they are still plenty good enough to beat Washington. Indiana's offense has been nothing short of explosive, and their defense has been absolutely lights out. I cannot give enough credit to current head coach Curt Cignetti, who has turned that team around in just 1 year. They have risen far above what has ever been expected of this Indiana team in my lifetime. Meanwhile, Washington has had a pretty mediocre season at best. They got blown out by Iowa in their most recent game, and their other losses were to Rutgers and Washington State. Indiana looks like a real team, one that can succeed against inferior opponents with or without their starting quarterback. I think that they are balanced enough to lean on the ground game and their defense, even if the backup quarterback is not able to play at a high level. And Washington has had their moments, but they are just not a consistent enough team to beat this Indiana team. Give me the Hoosiers all day long. And next I have Texas at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt finds himself in another interesting position, playing a quality opponent at home, fresh after that team had a big game against Georgia. The only problem is nobody is overlooking little old Vanderbilt this time. And the team that's going to Nashville ended up losing to Georgia, so they may have a bit of a chip on their shoulder going into this game. Vanderbilt is definitely a quality team this year, no doubt about that, but lightning does not strike twice. I'm picking against them here. Texas is just too talented to lose this game, in my opinion. Yes, Vanderbilt has Diego Pavia, and that Vanderbilt team is very well coached and have a ton of heart, but I think Texas is overall a better team than the version of Alabama that strolled into Nashville. And I think Texas has a good enough defense to limit scores and a good enough offense to score consistently. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout, but I'm also not saying it won't be. It could be close or it could be a blowout. Either way, I'm picking Texas. Next, I have Notre Dame at Navy. And you may wonder why I'm breaking this game down, but in case you haven't noticed, Navy is undefeated with a dominant win over Memphis, and they are a ranked team. Yes, you heard me right. Obviously, their schedule is no murderer's row, and Notre Dame obviously has the better athletes, but this Notre Dame team also lost to Northern Illinois earlier in the season, and this game is being played at Navy's building. This could be a huge opportunity for Navy to put its name in the G5 auto bid hat. Don't get me wrong, I am still picking Notre Dame in this game, but I would not be too shocked to see Navy pull this off, and I would be quite happy about it. I would love to see a service academy in the playoffs, and with Army and Navy being undefeated at this point in the season, that is a very likely possibility. But since we are on the topic, I think it is time to talk about a possible scenario because I think it's really interesting, and it may or may not be irrelevant after this week, depending on the results. But while very unlikely, the situation is still possible. It has been confirmed that the Army-Navy game at the end of the season will not be taken into consideration when seeding the playoffs. Well, what if both teams are still undefeated by then? For that to happen, both teams would obviously have to beat Notre Dame, hence why the situation is unlikely, not to mention the other teams on their schedule. But if it were to happen, then it is possible for the loser of that game to make the playoffs and the winner to be sitting at home watching. I know that sounds confusing, but since this game is not considered by the playoff committee due to it taking place during negotiations, the decision on which team would take that G5 auto bid spot in the playoffs would end up being decided by strength of schedule and other matters. Navy does have the more difficult schedule of the two with games against Memphis and Tulane, so they would likely be the one that got selected, even if an undefeated Army beats them in that game. Just something to think about. Anyways, back to this game, Notre Dame has definitely shown some vulnerability, but they continue to improve. Notre Dame does look weaker against rushing attacks, and Navy does have that. Their offense has scored a lot on the back of the ground game, and that may be troublesome for Notre Dame. Navy also has a really good special teams unit, and they usually win the field position battle, and I expect they're going to have to do that again if they want to win this game. And I would have more faith in Navy if their schedule was stronger, but it's really hard to assess how effective they will be against Notre Dame when they've only played a myriad of G5 schools. Notre Dame has more proven ability. They've had an impressive last 3 games against power conference opponents, and I do not think they're going to overlook Navy like they did in IU. And the last game I have is Missouri at Alabama. Well, if this was last year's Missouri, I would pick them to beat this year's Alabama any day of the week, but it's not. Alabama has looked rough ever since the Georgia game, but Missouri has looked even rougher. You can point out all of Alabama's flaws, but their losses have been close. Meanwhile, Missouri got splattered by Texas A&M. Yes, Missouri was able to do what Alabama was not able to do in beating Vanderbilt, although it was in overtime, but that does not mean that they are going to beat Alabama. Also, this game is taking place at Bryant-Denny, so good luck to the Tigers. Brady Cook has looked average all season, but if there's a defense that you can get right against, it's probably this Bama squad, especially when you have a receiver like Luther Burden III, who should absolutely torch these Alabama defenders. But something just is not clicking with Missouri, which could be said about Alabama too, but just not to the same degree. Alabama may be not an elite team like we're used to seeing them, but they are still a really good team. Meanwhile, Missouri is not a good team. They were good last year, but I've been given no reason to believe that they are above average this year. They narrowly escaped Auburn, Vanderbilt, and Boston College, and as I mentioned already, they got blown out by Texas A&M, and this is do or die for Alabama, and I think that they are not so bad of a team that they drop a game like this. Anyways, those are all the games I'm breaking down in this video, guys. If you want to see the rest of my predictions, head over to my social media accounts on Threads and X at @A_Rock321. I hope you like this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. So yeah, peace.